Welcome to Knowledge Cast. This is a look into the world of knowledge management, information management, data management, AI, and everything in between. This is brought to you by Enterprise Knowledge. I'm Zach Wahl, founder and CEO of EK, and today we're speaking with Dave Boland of Ogletree Deakins, where he's the Chief Knowledge and Innovation Officer, CKIO. Dave, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Zach. I appreciate that.
I'm glad to have you on. And if you've listened before, you'll know that I always like to lead off with the same question, which is, what is your definition of knowledge management?
Seemingly simple question, right? I think over my career, I've heard a lot of good definitions, things like connecting people to people and people to content. I've always appreciated the kind of KM marketplace analogy of consumers and producers. And there's this KM marketplace that's reducing friction, getting the right information to the right person at the right time through the right channel or medium. But I think as I've kind of advanced in this area through years of experience, I prefer to really position our knowledge and innovation team as knowledge consultants or knowledge advisors. What are the challenges, issues, areas of friction that are prohibiting someone from working efficiently or with the best information the firm has to offer? And then bringing knowledge management principles, tools, solutions to those situations and try to leave it pretty broad and open as opposed to having a really kind of narrow, purist definition. I've probably become less of a purist over time and tried to see myself and the teams that I'm a part of as really trying to be problem solvers, but really adhering to those principles that would be core tenets that all of us, all the knowledge management professionals would agree and want to underscore and implement.
Nice. It's a little ironic. The first question I always ask is to define KM, and yet I myself have little patience for people who try to define KM. So I love the fact that you're talking about broad and open, and sort of interpreting that you're meeting people where they are, and you're just helping to solve their problems. I love the words you use there: consultants, advisors. So what are those problems that you're helping to solve today? What do you commonly see?
Why don't we have information about what we know? So knowledge management is that problem is if we knew what we know, we'd be able to solve a lot of problems. So I think they're very traditional issues around from a law firm perspective, where have we gone up against opposing counsel? When have we worked with these mediators, arbitrators? Certainly any client information that we have that exists. I think what we're seeing is that maybe historical definition of knowledge, people thinking about documents, is now become much more broad in looking at things like data. How can we use data, whether that's Ogletree data, our own data, whether that's client data, whether it's public data, whether it's purchase data? All of that tells a story, and they need our organization, my team, to really be able to deliver value and insights from that data, whether, again, it's a broad spectrum. It's almost the ability to kind of mash those things up, connect the dots, tell a story that is meaningful, that either equips our attorneys to be able to make better decisions or provide better services, or in some cases directly to the client using some of the client data.
Yeah, this is, I think, an exceptional change within the industry, and it's one that we've been really proud to be a part of. But it strikes me how quickly it has changed. The idea that in this world, if you were to show up at a KM conference and say, yeah, data is a huge part of my job, boy, 5 years ago, that would have been
Yeah.
sacrilege, right? You would have been booed out of the room. How has that shift happened at Ogletree Deakins and in your role? How have you, because surely there were people that were like data managers and had ownership of the data. How have you inserted yourself into that role? How have you come to play a part in the data side of the house?
Maybe before I respond to that, I was just kind of reflecting on what's unfolded over the last few years, maybe the last decade, and
Please.
I was reflecting on that traditional model. I'm not sure if it's Tom Stewart, but the data, information, knowledge, and wisdom, that continuum, that framework. And I remember earlier on in my career using that model to kind of fence off the knowledge, make a point to say, we're not the data people. We're not interested in information. We're the knowledge team. We're the purists here. And over the last decade, now seeing myself in in our function is really more around viewing that more as a supply chain and thinking through, well, to really deliver knowledge, we've got to start with having good data. And that data, we've got to be able to understand it and tell a story, deliver insights from that, which leads to this whole continuum of that framework. So when I reflect back, being more proprietary or trying to refine our space within that model, now seeing the connection that exists across that entire framework. How that's unfolded at Ogletree, and I think probably with most things in my career, is some of it's just showing up at the right time and having the right conversations. And so would love to say that it was beautifully orchestrated and it was a genius idea that I hadn't presented to the board and they all thought it was amazing. But sometimes it's just very, very practical where a situation shows up. And for us, where we really started getting our footprint in the data space was that we had several of our clients needing a lot of their data to support some of the litigation and counseling work we do to be analyzed. And they had typically farmed that out to other organizations to do. But there's clear value in maintaining that within one organization, the attorneys that you're working with, and to have that same organization really getting under the hood of your data. And so that's where it started. And it started with two, three, four people initially, and has grown to a team of over 30 people just in our data analytics team. And
Wow.
what's been helpful, again, looking at that continuum, is that it's not just a standalone offering, but how does that tie to the other scope of services that we have within what we call our knowledge and innovation team? We've got our traditional KM activities, which is we oversee our intranet, enterprise search. We work with our various practice groups, or in some cases, service, people would call them service lines at other organizations, again, to look at those best practices and things that can be leveraged and reused. So those are some of the traditional things. We've got a legal research capability on our team, but we also, this was new to me coming over to Ogletree Deakins, is also having responsibility for our extranet capabilities. So that really started as kind of what we call our matter collaboration sites, opportunities to collaborate with the client using an extranet solution. And then that really leading to creating a client specific solution, well, client portal that has actually productized some of our traditional services and put that into a platform that is now a subscription based service. And we're now 3 years down the road, and that has essentially generates a positive ROI for the firm. We've recouped our investment in that platform, and we currently deliver a 7-figure annuity revenue stream for the firm. Very different from a model that's typically a billable hour, kind of framework to, a Netflix revenue stream in many ways. So it's some of these things just as situations pop up, there's the opportunity to step in. Again, kind of maybe underscoring the comments around being consultants or advisors, working with leadership to identify where those problems are and say, we can address that. We can work with you to fix those things. And what it ends up doing is kind of reshape kind of an amoeba like organization versus this is what we do, here's where we start, here's where we end. But also to have a mindset that we're not doing it alone, right? That I jokingly say in knowledge management, I can't do anything by myself. I've got a team I've got to collaborate other departments, key stakeholders, vendors that we work with, external partners that we would work with to actually be successful. And so what that does is it brings down some of those barriers or silos, but really just department lines that exist in an organization. Again, I may rely on our IT organization to help on this work that we're doing. I think finding those challenges, being willing to step in, explore, see what capabilities we have on a team that can address those things, and where we don't have them, find the right partners to help deliver, whether that's internal or external to the firm.
Okay. You are really speaking my language. I love it. So first, I want to go back to this very important point. You have successfully monetized knowledge management. Very few organizations have been able to do that. And you've done it in a way that's in huge service to your organization, and that it's a subscription model. So it's actually steady revenue. It's not project based. It's not up and down. That is a lot of value. Was that a hard sell to the rest of the organization's leadership? How did you make that case or come up with that idea?
It's a great question. I think looking back to the conversations we had, we were working with what we called our innovation council. So you're in a room full of people that are already forward thinkers, people looking to add value to clients, and an openness to doing things differently. And there were a few, I would say, smaller products that were kind of starting to venture into this space, but were not proving to be a profitable model and having difficulty to be sustainable. I wouldn't want to take away from those efforts because they really laid the groundwork for something that we are doing today. But what it required was having a very serious conversation about the investment required, not only the technology investment that would be needed, but also on the content side, getting a team of former practicing attorneys to really create, maintain, and keep updated highly relevant content that our clients need. And it's really around that compliance content, 50 state compliance content that can become ultimately a self service model. And the willingness to say, okay, well, they subscribe, we're going to get a different type of revenue stream coming through that may take a little hit to the model that exists today, but the belief that that will lead to more meaningful conversations, higher value added work. And I think when that journey started 3 years ago, there wasn't all the AI that's in this space. We referred to it as the largest innovation project the firm had undertaken in its history and had great support from leadership. So, the short answer to your question is that I think the people that were around the table already had a mindset to like, let's do something unique that's different, that's very forward facing and bold. And so it didn't feel hard in hindsight. I felt like I was gathering with like minded folks and just needed someone to step up and own it and drive it, put structure around it, and then start marching down the path of execution.
Oh, that's exciting. That's phenomenal. It is not always doable, right? In every organization, you can't always do that, but you're in a very specific space. And I love this idea of the Innovation Council. How did that come to be at Ogletree Deakins? That's unique in and of itself.
Yeah, and I would say it's been one of our key success factors. And I would chalk it up into this space, probably a word that's not overly exciting or sexy, but governance. But I have appreciated throughout my career the importance of really having good governance in place. That Innovation Council came into being. It was, again, a collection of some of our leading shareholders, and my team kind of came alongside. And initially, that group would identify meaningful projects, either that would have impact with our clients or internal. And KM at the time really became kind of the execution arm of that council. We were delivering probably about 80% of those items. And then, as probably maybe a year, year and a half, the leader of our innovation council began to acknowledge the role that knowledge management was playing. And then, with an increasing agenda around innovation, felt there was a need to formalize a home for innovation within the firm. And that is when we actually, in knowledge management, we changed our name because leadership determined that knowledge management would be where we would be the formal home of innovation. What that didn't mean is that we're the only ones doing innovation. So I think some organizations do a carve out and say, this is a separate innovation function. They're here from corporate, they're here to help, do what they say. Our view was to take an organization that's already teaming with the existing departments, is already leading some of these projects or helping to facilitate, and really serve as the function that is bringing transparency, some structure, and refining those things. And where we've now morphed to is that we've got our Innovation Council. We meet with them monthly, virtually, and annually in person. And they really help prioritization. They help with where we need funding, if it's not included in a budget, with those items. And then we've established working groups that help feed that. So we've got an AI working group that's comprised of business professionals and attorneys that are subject matter experts. And again, all on a monthly cadence. We've got a data strategy working group, a different set of people. The common denominator is our K&I team and or people that are part of the K&I team. And then we've got this client portal working group that's looking at how do we continue to advance not only the content, the features, the revenue stream, et cetera, run it like a business. Those working groups then all are tethered through the knowledge and innovation team up to the innovation council. And so, what I think it has allowed us to do, Zach, is to move very quickly, that we can have an idea that comes in the door, have a meeting with our AI working group as an example, and then later that month, have a recommendation to the innovation council, get a decision, and start executing. And so, even though governance doesn't sound overly exciting, it has really been the accelerator for us. It's the gas pedal that has allowed us to move from idea to decision in a very short period of time. In the world of AI today, that has been absolutely paramount for us to be able to move beyond just talking about it. And it's been fun, it's been exciting.
I agree. Governance is cooler than most people give it credit. But I would also say what I'm hearing is a ton of leadership support, willingness to change within the organization, willingness to experiment, to try things and see if they work. I mean, you don't become an innovative organization by creating an innovation council. You become an innovative organization by leading and by putting your money where your mouth is to a certain extent. So impressive stuff.
That's spot on, Zach. I'm quick to just say that we've been really fortunate to have found favor with our leadership team here, and that we have a group of leaders who, as you said, are willing to try new things, are willing to put their money where their mouth is, and also to be aggressive and yet patient. Right. So it's like knowing that sometimes these things take a while to unfold and really being true to the culture of the firm. I think long before I was here, the culture of this firm has been one of innovation and being forward facing and trying new things. I think that's been part of the firm's DNA. And so for me personally, it's been really exciting to have that level of support, trust, and we don't take it lightly. We try to earn our stripes every day, and we don't take for granted that if we get additional headcount, if we get funding for a project, that means deliver with excellence. We've got to prove that every day.
Very impressive. So you also used one of my other favorite words there, and it was partnership. So in order to accomplish these various initiatives, you don't have all the resources in house. You need counsel, you need probably some IT talent, you need these other folks. What's your strategy for reaching across the aisle, so to speak? How do you get people that don't report to you engaged on these projects in a way that feels like a win-win?
Yeah, one of the first things I stood up when I got here, and this would be about 5 years ago, is that we pulled the leaders of every department across the organization together every other month and did basically a stakeholder call where we would share what we were working on at the time. What was making that pressing is that we were moving our intranet from on-prem to the cloud. So this was in 2020, 2021 timeframe. And because they all had a vested interest in their presence on the intranet, it was of value to them to come together collectively to hear where things are going. We use that time to solicit feedback, get input, course correction. But what's happening in my mind was that was a time of really establishing trusted relationships, collaborative relationships. And that being early on in my time with Ogletree has really set the tone that we work together, that we may have very different perspectives. And that means we're probably doing what we've been asked to do by the organization, but we're all wearing the same color jersey, and tried to emphasize that it's less about who gets credit for scoring the goal, but it's about scoring the goal. It's about delivering the project. And so, whether it was KM teaming up with marketing and IT, and all three of us got it done, that's a victory. That's a win. It doesn't have to be, well, KM led and marketing took a back seat and IT came along, or upside the other way around. It's really about delivering value. I think what we've tried to do and initiatives that we do own is to make sure that we're providing a level of leadership and guidance, but in a very open way that is soliciting the expertise of the groups that we need to work with. So I think that that's been part of our reputation, that we're easy to work with and continue to do that. When I think about different perspectives, you may appreciate this because I think historically KM and IT have sometimes butted heads. Certainly in my
I would
career,
say.
that's
Yeah.
probably been the most tenuous relationship. And I described it to one of our leaders. And again, it's an oversimplification. It just shows the different perspective. But when you think about knowledge and innovation, it's about playing offense. It's about trying new things, trick plays, new plays. It's about doing things that we haven't done before. And you have a very offense mindset. Our IT organization, on the other hand, is getting paid in many ways to play defense. It's about risk, making sure the systems stay up and working, making sure that when you boot up your laptop, it's working. You've got the latest software. And both of us are really in earnest doing our jobs, what the firm has asked us to do. But when offense and defense is looking at a particular topic, they're going to have different perspectives. So, how do we collaborate and work? I meet with our CIO. We have weekly conversations and have just developed a very nice friendship and has been, we can't be successful without their help. And I'd like to think that they would be less successful without our help. And so it's finding those things that we can really work together on and being patient with one another when we're working through, hey, wait a minute, we got to run that through a security review. Hold on, cowboy, great idea, but you can't skip steps 1 through 3 before we move forward. And then the willingness on our part to say, okay, that's going to take a little while. So the sooner we can tee that up and work together, the better. In fact, we bring our leaders in our IT group and our K&I group together on a weekly call as well. So in addition to my one-on-one meeting, we bring our leaders, and it has become an incredibly efficient time that we meet where it is almost a punch list that we're just knocking out. And it's been thrilling to see the health of that interaction and collaboration and mutual respect for one another has been really helpful.
KnowledgeCast is brought to you by Enterprise Knowledge, the world's largest dedicated knowledge management consultancy. From training to benchmarks, strategy, design, prototyping, and all the way to enterprise-level implementations, Enterprise Knowledge wants to be your services partner, spanning the fields of knowledge management, knowledge graphs, data, learning, advanced content management, and enterprise artificial intelligence. Contact us at info@enterprise-knowledge.com to discuss how we can support you.
The thing I like about your analogy, offense and defense, is that makes up a whole team. And I think that's very healthy. It is not like that in many organizations, as I think you well know. In many organizations, it's how do we get past IT or how do we work around IT? So to hear the health with which you're approaching this and the positivity, I think is a model that others could learn from. I'm so fixated on the title, knowledge and innovation. I think when I first saw CKIO, I was thinking knowledge and information. Knowledge and innovation, I love the mashups. Knowledge and learning is a pretty common one that I get excited about. Knowledge and data is one that we use here at EK. But knowledge and innovation is unique, and it just makes so much sense to me. The fact that you are the part of the organization that kicks down the door, that tries the new things, that harnesses the energy and creativity of the organization, that is just phenomenal. And it makes a ton of sense of why you've made so much progress. So, of course, now I will go towards those two letters that everybody's talking about, A and
Right.
I. So, what are you doing around AI?
We've really been incredibly busy in that space, and who's not, right? It is unavoidable in many ways and very, very exciting to see what is unfolding in that space. It was in July, I want to say, of 23 that leadership asked us to define an AI strategy for the firm. And so it was at that time, again, I think leadership wanted to make sure with all that was starting to unfold that we had real clarity on what was inbounds, what was out of bounds, what was going to be our approach, what resources were going to be needed to be able to move things forward, and how we would be able to do that effectively. And so, part of the more tactical approach, we knew we needed some general assistance. We knew we needed some legal specific assistance. We knew we needed legal research. And then we knew we needed point solutions that were going to solve very finite, somewhat limited challenges that we have that AI could definitely bring value. And some of those point solutions we defined as being developed internally. And some of them we would be working with specific vendors and partners to help us solution those items. And so that became kind of our map and construct in which we would talk about or frame AI. And then in addition, I mentioned our AI working group previously. That was part of the strategy as well. Well, let's form an AI working group that's a combination of attorneys with subject matter expertise as well as business professionals that have subject matter expertise as well. And so that they can begin rolling up their sleeves, literally working on this topic. And at the time, I think not really appreciating how quickly this was going to explode and how fast this was going to move. And we actually kicked that off. That was in July was the strategy. In September of 23 was our first AI working group. And then the third component that we wanted to emphasize was leadership, was around, call it change management, call it engagement. We've kind of settled more on a term of awareness and adoption. But we wanted to be really bold in this area and even made the statement that innovation equals adoption. Said another way, if we create something or deliver something and no one's using it or very few people are using it, we can't call it a success. We can't put the points on the board. And ultimately, we better figure out what it was that we didn't do correct or what it was that we can learn from it to not repeat that. But we wanted to make sure that there was a high premium and value associated with adoption. And so that initial strategy coming up on almost 3 years ago now has really served us well. That AI working group has become more and more sophisticated. And as new products come out, the ability to have Gemini come out with all this new information and then just shortly thereafter, Claude coming out. And it allowed us to do a very quick recalibration and maybe shift to something with a latest development there without over investing. It's also included a very refined pilot strategy in what we've put in place. And so, again, underscoring speed as part or velocity in not only our decision making, but piloting things and getting to recommendations as quickly as possible has really been the lens that we've used in looking at that AI strategy. So today we've got an enterprise license agreement with Harvey, which is a legal specific assistant. We're seeing really nice adoption. We're measuring number of prompts. We're looking at unique users. And last year, our focus was really on our attorney community. How do we help our attorneys and an appropriate prioritization? Last year, we also had a white labeled chat GPT solution that a vendor created for us. So here were a couple different assistants, one that's legal specific, one that's more general. In looking at that combination, we had 500,000 prompts in 2025. We were averaging north of 50,000 prompts. I think we hit 60,000 prompts earlier this year in a month. We're seeing good engagement in that level. We're also seeing number of unique users tracking really well. And to rewind the clock in the spring, as we were reporting to the board, we shared that the adoption levels were about 30%. And our observation is that without a tremendous amount of effort, we can get to a third. Our concern is that's not good enough and wanted to make sure that the board's perspective as to whether that was good enough for them or they expected more. And we had a really good conversation around what's the target number. 100% is not realistic. Where should it be? And coming out of that meeting was a renewed investment in awareness and adoption. And so over the summer, we really doubled down on our awareness and adoption activities to where we're now seeing, in the fall, we are seeing those numbers north of 50%. We're seeing among our attorney community, it's well over 80%. We're encouraged. And then we also acknowledge the fact that there's a whole continuum here when we talk about adoption. Going in and uploading a document and saying summarize, or draft an email for me, or compare document A and document B. Those are on one end of the spectrum versus interacting in a much more robust way around almost as an assistant, as a co-pilot, and really taking advantage of some of the advanced features, some of the workflows. Harvey's got a vault feature. Many of these tools have nice features. And we're even seeing that being used within communities. One of our practice groups has set up a vault of best practices that group can then query and use. And so it's also raising other challenges or things that we need to think through. How does that tie to our document management system? How do we make sure that some of that's shared more broadly in an intranet versus just within one practice group? And so it comes back to some very core tenets of knowledge management, store it once, share in many places, it's the things that are really fundamental, but never really go away or look different, but really bring us back to some of those core principles. And so we're excited about what we see happening in AI, and we're beginning to look at even more strategically 2, 3, 4 years down the road. What is that impact going to be to our organization through a variety of lenses, and beginning to lift our heads up from the flurry of activities to take a more strategic view on these things and trying to think through, well, what happens if the billable hour model that is core to a law firm, what if that begins to shift just a little bit? We've already productized some services. What allows us to productize more? Where does it make sense to productize? Where does it not make sense to productize? Where does it make sense to flat fee bill or value bill versus what's more appropriate for the billable hour? Most of my colleagues in the legal environment are all asking this question. It's a tough one to untangle. And then a lot of firms have so much tied to that billable hour that if it begins to quiver a little bit, it sends tremors through the rest of the system. And those are things that really need to be thought through in a very thoughtful way.
And yet, thanks to your organization's innovation, you've already insulated against that billable quivering a little bit through your leadership. That's amazing. That's great. I want to hammer a point here. You talked about core principles and foundations, and I've long said that traditional KM, the quality, knowledge, information, and data, the tagging and structuring of it, the connecting people to experts, getting that stuff right is all the gateway to AI, to getting AI successful within an organization. I think that you agree with that based on what I've heard thus far. Can you expand on it?
100%, Zach. I had this experience at a former employer where we were getting ready to launch an intranet, SharePoint Online. And you may recall a product that Microsoft had called Delve, where it really surfaced a lot of Microsoft 365 data. And my comment to leadership at that time was like, when we turn this on, it is going to shine a bright light on good process and bad process. It's going to shine a bright light on good quality and bad quality, and things that were under the hood and invisible before are going to be really visible. And it's going to hurt a little bit. I mean, that's the reality, is that it is going to hurt a little bit. I think with AI, it's underscoring how important the quality of the data is, whether that's through tagging and structuring or just qualitatively the importance of it being really good for AI to be optimally effective. And so, once again, here is very powerful technology shining a bright light on our gaps, on our weak spots, on the areas that we need to improve. And, it's not enjoyable, right? I mean, it's like going to the doctor and it's like, does this hurt? And like, yeah, it hurts. And it's like, does it hurt now? Yeah, it still hurts. Like, stop doing that. And yet that's really the path to us delivering, real value and really getting the optimal value out of some of this powerful technology. But it has to come with I think, an acceptance that we're going to learn some things here that maybe we thought all along, but it's going to be clear, and it's probably going to be clear to a lot of people that things are not as they should be. Again, underscores the importance of what we do day in and day out. Couldn't agree more with you.
I think that our listeners are going to love what you're saying, because for me, the knowledge management professional should be at the center of innovation for an organization, but certainly as part of that should be at the center of any AI initiatives. And I think that you're delivering wonderful proof points and you're showing up with numbers, which I really appreciate, to support why that's so critical. So yes, you were 100% speaking my language. Dave, I want to go back to July of 2023.
Yeah.
Within your organization. I think what we've heard from a lot of organizations that maybe haven't been as innovative as you is that their CEOs burst into a room and said, we need AI, and then left the room. And I trust that didn't happen with you all.
Right.
What was your why? What was the AI so that? What is the intent? What are you trying to, or what have you accomplished from a business perspective with AI?
One, it is an acknowledgement that there's great opportunity, even if we don't know exactly what that's going to be or what it's going to look like. We see some things that we pause and we just go, wow, did that just happen? And go like, well, what are the implications of that? Like, could we do that over here? Would it be possible one day to be able to think this and do this and get that? And so I think at the beginning stages, it is an acknowledgement that this is powerful and there is an opportunity for us to really benefit. And again, that could be through efficiencies, productivity. It could be through transformation, big transformational concepts and ideas. It could be in reshuffling how we're structured. It could shake how we reward and recognize people. It could shake how we interact with our clients because maybe our clients can now do things that they relied on us to do, which how do we then move up the value chain to deliver even more thoughtful guidance and direction, better solutions. So I think it starts there. And then my observation would be what we're seeing today is more on that front end of the efficiencies, the productivities. There was I remember a conversation. It's like, you're coming back asking for more resources. Shouldn't AI be actually making our resources smaller? Shouldn't the human dependency be dropping? And it was somewhat actually said in jest because I think there was an understanding of the need that this is all different and new and requires for this to be successful. It's not about, hey, we've got a tool, click here, good luck, but that we've really got to think through how does it apply to us specifically? How does it apply to our attorneys? How do we help them integrate it into their practice? My observation is a different type of engagement with our stakeholders because it's not just a go here, click, and let me watch this 2-minute video and you're off and running. It's a little more, I think, sophisticated than that, or at least that's kind of the way I think of it. I think today we're clearly seeing these efficiency gains, we're seeing productivity gains. And I would want to make sure I also underscore the quality aspect of it. So it's not just about faster, but the actual quality of the results that we see are remarkable. I was joking with someone earlier this week. I'm part of a Rotary Club and I'm on our foundation board. And so we had a foundation board meeting and I turned on a transcription, got the transcription, uploaded the audio file and got the written transcription, took the written transcription, asked AI to summarize the notes and action items and all that, and reviewed it, made some edits, all that kind of stuff. And within 30 minutes, came back with a really robust set of notes. The reality is that I wouldn't have spent more than 30 minutes in total. But the notes that they would have gotten had I not used a transcription service and did all that stuff with AI would have probably been like 5 bullet points because I just wasn't going to spend a whole lot of time, truth be told. But yet there was a really robust set of notes and action items that was delivered in the same amount of time. So I think the other thing is what we haven't done in the past, we can now do. I think it really underscores that moving up the value chain in things that we can do and deliver. So it's efficiencies, it's productivity gains, it's qualitative improvement, and then it's an ability to do something that we probably wouldn't have taken the time to do or weren't capable of being able to do. But now shifting more of that mindset to strategic thinking and asking the next question, the follow-on question that before we only had 30 minutes. So I got done what I got done in 30 minutes and there you go.
You're talking about the quality and completeness of what you're getting out of AIs instead of just the speed. And I think that's a great point. It does speak to then what do you actually do with all that time that's been saved? And I'll use that as a little bit of a segue to talk about how all of this is impacting your lawyers, especially the associates. What we're hearing from some of our law firm clients is that those that are adapting really well, that have been really successful, are those that are finding AI to be a partner to them. But then there are others that are struggling. So I wonder if you could share how things are going for you all.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. What's interesting to me is probably our busiest associates are the ones most excited about using AI. And it's because they want their time back in some cases, or they want to be able to take those things that are either more time consuming or less enjoyable, kind of lower on the food chain, if you will, to get help with that so that they can begin thinking either more efficient use of their time, compressing their time, or redirecting that time to higher value added activities. Again, thinking more strategically, more critical thinking, identifying areas that they can add more value. And I think we see that with our associates that you would say are probably leading the pack. And I would suggest that maybe those are the ones that are really going to excel and be the lawyer of the future because they're embracing those things. I think where we see some reservation, and again, I think this would be more anecdotal than anything else, so I'd want to maybe qualify it in that way. It's people who might feel that they're either protecting their time because of some of the measurements that we have within a firm, right? So we're talking about the billable hour. I got to preserve that. That's how I'm measured. That's how I'm rewarded. And then I think there's things that my team can do that can also help this group, which is take out some of the mystery. What was interesting to me with our summer associates last year is that they were not encouraged in law schools to use AI. And I think
Right.
that's starting to change as we're seeing some of the law schools embrace that a little differently or work with that a little differently. But we realized it was important for us to be able to take those summer associates, first year associates, and have an AI boot camp, have an AI hackathon. Take out the mystery, take out the unknown, the fear of the unknown, and make it very practical and tactical. Here is a use case you can specifically use to use this tool. You're going to be asked to do this 100 times. This is real life. This is what you're going to wake up Monday morning and have to get done. And I think it's making a safe place for them to be able to try and experiment. It's also, I think, uncomfortable for the attorney persona. You don't think of attorneys as experimenters. Let's try this. It's more like, here are the facts. I got to get a solution. Here's all my precedent. Boom, boom, boom. And there's not a lot of, I don't want to say creativity. I don't think that's fair, but it's not in the DNA that exists. Where if you were to move into a consulting firm, you got people coloring outside the lines all the time and really fueling creativity. I think we need to see more of that curiosity. That's one of my favorite words is just having that level of curiosity to go and try something. I love the younger generation, my daughter being one of those in that there's no fear of breaking something. It's like, well, just try it. Just try this. See what this does. See what that does. And I didn't grow up that way. Well, it says here you're supposed to do this, this, and this. So that's what you do. And that will be increasingly important with the velocity in which things are changing. That level of curiosity, that level of agility and flexibility, that ability to quickly adapt. Maybe that's synonymous with agility, to ingest something that's different and quickly modify and move forward.
I love that sentiment. And I have zero doubt that our listeners at this point are saying, wow, this guy is doing cool stuff. And I look at your track record and tell our listeners a little bit about what prepared you to be so successful where you are now. Give us a little bit about your history.
I've really had the pleasure of working at some great organizations. I started my career with Arthur Andersen, and that's where I actually got first introduced to knowledge management. I was in their business consulting practice and had an opportunity to do a one-year tour of duty with what was called the development group.
Nice.
Little did I know that it was old school knowledge management. We had filing cabinets full of best practice proposals, deliverables. We were creating service line methodologies. We had expertise database, access databases on CD-ROMs. We had engagement information system. And in hindsight, that's what we were doing. It just wasn't called that at the time. And then being able to build on that, I had a wonderful tenure at Deloitte and took on different knowledge management roles that exposed me to different groups. And I think growing up in a matrix organization, in a partnership model, has really affected the way I view things. And I think in hindsight has really contributed to my view of KM around collaborating. There's not an edict. It's not top down. The boss says this, everybody does it. You've got all these partners that need to collaborate and agree. It's consensus building. It's going slow to go fast. And so that's all I've known. And so it has allowed me to appreciate that you may have to have the conversation more than once, that you need to work using influence versus reporting line authority and build those bridges. And then I think always coming back to this, being able to define value and benefit. If I'm struggling to define that, that's probably my first red flag that it's probably not a good project.
Yeah.
If my stakeholder can't clearly articulate that themselves, there's more work to be done. But I tell you, Zach, not only have I worked at some really wonderful organizations, I've worked with just some amazing leaders. And I think most people could say that we're all the product of all the people that have poured into us and have just worked with great thinkers, with great strategists, with great executors that know how to get things done and to be effective. And I hope I serve them well. I hope that I carry on what they've poured into me and then henceforth pouring that into my team. You're very complimentary of me, but the reality is it's a team sport. The team that I have the pleasure of overseeing and working with is just phenomenal. And the talent, the skill, and then it's not just what we do, it's how we do it is something that really, I think, has contributed to our success and how we treat one another on the team, how we treat others outside the team, how we view client service. All of that kind of comes together to work and to be fun. It's also about having some fun along the way.
I have no doubt that your employees love working for you too, and they're going to be telling these stories about, this one great boss I had, Dave Boland. That's the way that this
You're
goes.
too
So well
kind.
done. Boy, I really enjoyed this conversation. Dave Boland, Chief Knowledge and Innovation Officer at Ogletree Deakins. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Zach.
And to our listeners, thanks for joining this episode of KnowledgeCast. To check out more, visit our website at enterprise-knowledge.com.
For more from our hosts on how semantic layers are transforming the enterprise in the age of AI, pick up their new book, Bridging Knowledge, Data, and AI, Harnessing the Semantic Layer Framework to Drive Intelligence. The book is available now on Amazon or wherever books on semantics are sold. And for more on their groundbreaking work, visit enterprise-knowledge.com.